I guess I want to start by showing you guys something that I've come up with that maybe have helped to some people. It is a series that I came up with to rank places based on these 6 different criteria that I've come up with. It's very personal, my opinion, having visited these places. I can't say I've lived in all these places year round, but I've taken about 20 different popular spots for expats, and I've established criteria around climate, connectivity, culture, community, care, and Costco as a metaphor for, easy access to stuff that you want to get from back home. So each of these, I use a 1 to 5 ranking. So a 1 would be sort of not the most advantageous for that particular criteria. So if you're getting a 1 as a climate, you're probably a place that's going to face really excessive heat and humidity. There aren't a lot of places in Mexico where excessive cold is an issue, although there are certainly towns at higher elevations that do face cold weather in the winter. But a 1 basically means the climate's just going to be too going to kind of force you to do more indoor living, and there really aren't any 1s in Mexico. I've given a couple places 2s and 3s, but that's mostly because I don't deal well in hot, humid weather. But that's me personally. If I had grown up in Atlanta or the Southeast somewhere, I probably would just take that in stride and not sort of give a lower ranking to a place because it was hot and humid in the summer months. So, connectivity is pretty obvious. It's, if you're in a place like Mexico City, where you can get on a nonstop plane to South America, Central America, Asia, Europe, US, Canada, that's going to be a 5. A 1 would be, a long drive to a close airport. Culture is a little more hard to define, except that these are places that really have an active calendar of events with festivals, celebrations, and all the places that get 5s have one thing in common, and that's they have a strong indigenous influence. Either that's through living cultures, or it's through art and craft traditions, or it's through archaeological sites in an area or historic buildings, these kind of things. And a 1 would be a place that's just, well, in some people's view, Lake Chapala is a 1. I give it very much higher rankings because there are people living here who think that we've been, if you will, overrun by foreigners, and that's the last thing they're looking for. So we'll talk about that too. Community has to do with the soft landing in Mexico, if that's what you're looking for. In other words, you can easily fall into meeting other non-Spanish speaking people if you don't speak the language. And there's a long list of charities, organizations, and places to get together and socialize that don't involve necessarily going to a bar every night, because that does characterize some places in Mexico for people who don't speak Spanish. They have limited abilities to socialize because they're not in a community that has a lot of other foreigners. So care is also a huge part of the rankings, and for people moving to Mexico, a 5 is a place like Mexico City or Guadalajara, Monterrey, that all have really world-class hospitals, specialist doctors. A 1 is going to be rural medical care that can be, some cases, third world, can face, shortages of basic medical supplies in public dispensaries, and doesn't have a lot of specialist doctors, those kinds of places. And then the last one is, you can actually go to a Costco, because there are 35 of them in Mexico, believe it or not. And your membership cost about half is what it costs in the United States. And you can use the card in the US, even if it's a Mexico card. So based on these criteria, I came up with these rankings, and I won't stop on all of these because I want to center on today's topic, which is where I live and where I've lived since 2015, and that's the Lake Chapala area. So I want to talk about some of the ups and downs of living here. Lake Chapala area gets one of the highest rankings of any place in Mexico because when I use these 6 criteria and I compare other places in Mexico, this place jumps to the top for 2 really big things. One of them is weather and the fact that you can live here comfortably and be outdoors 365 days a year here. Some would argue that comfort point, the period we're in right now, which is the month of May, where we do have extreme for our area, high temperatures. In other words, we'll be in the low 90s. It's the month before the rainy season starts. It's very dry, it's dusty. And this is common in many places of Mexico because you can't look at weather in terms of winter and summer. You can, of course, but the more prominent feature is rainy season versus dry season. And we're at the tail end of the dry season right now. And the rains are going to start to fall very, very shortly, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. And when that happens, the temperatures drop. And because we're at 5,000 feet, there's no humidity here, or very low humidity. And that's why Lake Chapala gets a 5 for that category. The other one that this area does extremely well on is community. And that has to do with the fact that, Americans, Canadians, and people from all over the world really have been moving here since the 1940s. So we have assets and institutions here that you just won't find in, certainly not in any beach resort, and only in a handful of other places in Mexico have the degree of socialization that happens here around a whole range of topics. So, for example, if you're bring your practicing your religion is important in Mexico. Well, here we have at least a dozen denominations all doing church services in English. You're not going to find that anywhere else in Mexico. We have the Lake Chapala Society, which is here to help people with their settling in Mexico, and also create a space where we can explore, exercise, health, take classes about living in Mexico, whether it's Mexican history or how to make aguas frescas or tequila tasting, or a course on Mexican manners, learn Spanish. We have health screenings that are completely free to everyone for skin cancer, hearing and eye doctors who come here and volunteer their time every week. So we are definitely a 5 when it comes to community, assuming you want to continue to engage with English speakers. Okay, certainly there are other great places in Mexico where community is everywhere in Mexico, but it's oftentimes hindered by your inability to speak Spanish. Okay, so I'm approaching this also from a typical American moving to Mexico who maybe doesn't have those language skills. Okay, so we rank very highly, and these are 2 of the ups of living here. The weather is the best in the world, I believe, and many people who are here and lived all over the world will tell you the same thing, because the houses here don't have air conditioning and they don't have heating. Why? Because we don't need it. Okay, that's how mild the temperature are in terms of the range. We do get down into the 50s sometimes at night, which makes it lovely for sleeping if you like cooler temperatures. And our high temperatures never get above the low 90s, basically. Okay, so these 2 criteria really are a big part of the lifestyle here, and have something to do with your living expenses as well, because you can spend a lot of money on utilities in Mexico depending on where you live. And if you're running, a big house full of air conditioners in every room 7 months of the year, that is definitely a cost consideration. The other categories that, and I'm going to go through the ups, I'll get to the downs in a second here, but the other ups here are access to an international airport. The Guadalajara airport is only 30 minutes away from Chapala, maybe 40 minutes from Ajijic. But we have an airport that is now offering nonstop flights to Europe. We have a flight to Madrid. I also just heard that Avianca is going to start flying Guadalajara, Bogota. We have a flight to Panama nonstop from here. And of course, everywhere in Mexico and to North America, US and Canada. We don't have nonstops to Canada, but we have nonstops to several locations in the United States. So that's a big plus. And people also should be thinking about travel costs, because the smaller the airport you're tied to, more likely is you're going to have limited airlines, and your ticket prices are going to be higher because of that. Guadalajara is a great, super easy in and out airport, and you can go to places as far away as Cancun or Tijuana if you want to get up to maybe go home in Southern California, Oaxaca, regions all over the country, and generally pay less than $150 round trip for those trips. So being next to a big airport, really, really important. Culture, I give a 5 to this place because we're in the state of Jalisco. And Jalisco is a remarkable landscape and has given Mexico a lot of its iconic cultural assets, starting with tequila, of course, mariachi music, and a very, very rich collection of music, song, and foods that are known all over the world that originate here in Jalisco. So you've got a lot of things to see and do around Jalisco culture, even though here living lakeside, and I'll jump right in with a negative here, you can also stay living in a bubble and basically have no connection with any of these cultural icons of Jalisco, well, other than tequila, of course. But you can certainly be here and not have any connection with those things too. And that's a criticism that people level up about this area, that it's too gringoized, right? And it's certainly, we are prevalent here, no question about it. I was in a coffee store a few months ago in downtown, and the guy behind me, he like tapped me on the shoulder and he said, what are all these Americans doing here? He couldn't believe it. He thought this was just, any old colonial town in Mexico. And so I told him a little bit about the history here, but it can be very jarring to some people who are looking for a real Mexico immersion experience. And then they show up, we have stores here that go to Costco every week, buy all Costco merchandise, unpack it, and sell it in like corner grocery stores here. So for some people, this place is, if you will, overrun with too much North American influence, too many Americans and Canadians who are here just maybe not for the right reason. There are a lot of people who move here mostly because of the weather and because it's affordable. And that is definitely a reality here, that there are people who really aren't here for the culture. They aren't here to connect with their Mexican neighbors. They're not here to learn Spanish. And they live in oftentimes gated communities, and they have very rich social lives, but they're not here to connect with Mexico. And that is a valid criticism, I might say, about this place. But it's also why it makes such a soft landing for people who don't speak Spanish, because you will immediately be connected with socially and with support for doing the things you need to do when you move to Mexico, getting a Mexican driver's license, how to make out a will in Mexico, Mexican insurance. All these things are really well curated here because of the quantity of foreigners that are living here and how long we've been here since, coming here, staying here since the 1940s. So we've had a really big impact on the community, and not always in positive ways. Medical care here is the next one. We have 3 hospitals here in the Lakeside area. A 4th one will be opening later this year. And it's pretty extraordinary that a town this small would have 4 hospitals that are essentially open to support an aging foreign-born audience. I'm not saying that these hospitals are only here for the foreigners, but the businesses themselves opened here because we have a prevalence of older people here.